Welcome everyone to Wellness Spring. Today I'm with my special guest, Iya Omi Tola, who is actually a lovely friend, a divine creator, a conscious mentor and instructor, and the founder of a Tantric life and Wild Lotus. So everyone has a good story, and Iya has been on a remarkable journey in this game called life, which I know she'll be super excited to share with us. So welcome, Iya, to the show. It's so lovely to have you with
Thank
us
you.
today.
Thank you so much. I'm really so grateful to be here and to share with you. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. And for the listeners, I actually met Iya, who was then called Roxana, many, many moons ago when she was a young girl, and have watched her grow up on and off over the years. And when she was very early 20s, I was blessed to go to one of her ceremonies. She had been teaching a sacred journey to women for empowerment. And she invited me to one of her ceremonies for the students, their graduation. I didn't really know what to expect, and it was absolutely amazing. She bathed our feet as soon as we arrived and did a lovely little blessing, and the rest was mind-blowing. So I don't want to say too much, but she included a fabulous ritual, and it was amazing to see all these women in their power. And Aya herself was only a young lady, and she's gone on to totally blossom and shine. But before we delve into your story, Aya, could you please tell the listeners a little bit about your upbringing, your family, where you grew up, your education, so they can get a feel for you?
Yeah, I'm very happy to share. And actually, we spoke a lot about my story last time we met, and it's an interesting reflection because there's the outer story of, a young girl growing up in Australia in a white family, very affluent and fortunate, and having a very, what I would call normal upbringing, privileged upbringing. And inside of what was a very pretty picture on the outside, internally, I had a lot of challenge emotionally and spiritually. And the inner world that we experience is what I call more the invisible side of life, or the unseen side of life. The unseen side of life to me is where everything originates, or the source. It's where it begins. So as we think in our heart, so are we. And so what's more interesting to me than the external facts of my past is more the internal experience, the internal facts. And I realized very early in life that the seen world isn't what it seems to be. And I like to live my law by I like to live my life by divine law, so adhering to the laws. So scripture is laws, and we see the laws in other places. I studied the Kabbalion, the Hermetic philosophies, and what essentially brought me to a life awakening early on, around 17, 18, I had dived into quite a dark place inside of emotional and spiritual turmoil. And I turned to drugs, and drugs were my self-medicating, now looking back on it, and also showing me parts of my nature that I was disconnected from through depression and conflict and pain. And so the drugs, I feel, particularly strong, heavy drugs, heroine. When I came into rehab at 17, the question they asked me is, what's your medicine? What's your poison? And I said, well, actually, and it just came out of my mouth. I said, I realized that I'm using heroin to remember my bliss, and that I've come here. This rehab I came to was a profound rehabilitation center. It's called, it'll come back to me. I've recently had a baby, and all the reports about having your baby brain and your memory is just wiped is a true. I can testify. It's been wiped. So some things are just a little slower to come back to my memory, but it was in Sydney on the northern beaches. And as you walked in, it was a rehabilitation for all kinds of addictions. So there were people of all ages with all kinds of addictions, from love addiction, alcohol, depression, lifestyle choices, and as I said, all ages. And so it wasn't just a heavy drug rehabilitation. And because of the all-embracing nature of this particular rehab and the small, like very personalized care, it allowed me to really blossom into waking up to what was really going on for me. And what was signaling now, where I could, every year I would give a different version of my history according to what I had become aware of. And so as of this moment, when I look onto my past, when you ask that question, I realized that I was awakening my true mission in life. And as I said, a divine law. Well, the first law that I live by is, let the weak man say, I am strong. So my destiny, my calling, let's say what I petitioned for in heaven before coming to earth, was to resurrect our power as women. And it's the power of love. It's the power of receptivity. It's the power of feeling and healing, and also the power of manifestation that we carry within our wombs. And I was not born into a divine, feminine, empowered family where I was prayed for and I was honored for my true nature. No, that was not the experience I had. I was born into a very loving family, yes, but a family that had ideas about what they wanted for my life. And whilst that might seem like, well, what's the big deal with that? On a spiritual level, it's the opposite of who we are, because we come here to live our life, not to fulfill someone else's desires. Our life is for ourselves. And firstly, getting that for me was huge. And so what I realized when I came into rehab was that all addiction is an expression of codependence. Our happiness and our happiness and state of being dependent on something outside of us, be it a person, a place, or a thing, a substance. So what I learned is that drugs themselves, or people, or sex, or alcohol, or substance, whatever that might be outside of us, itself is not addictive. It's our relationship to it. And so I woke up to realizing that I had been living a codependent life of attempting to fulfill other people's desires, or what I thought was other people's desires, or perhaps they were, but it only matters is my perception. And that the whole transformation for me was about coming home to, who am I? What have I come here for? And what personally fulfills me? And what is my deepest desire? And how do I fulfill that? And I came to realize that there were a set of social conditioning or beliefs that were agreed upon by groups of people or collectives, or even from my lineage, that was about, no, you satisfy others first. No, you live for others first. No, you please your parents, you please the school, you please the society. And all of this power is outside of us. Like the church knows about our spirituality, or the banker knows about our finances, or it's the doctor that knows about our health. And so everything is externalized in what I was born into, the culture I was born into. Everything had been externalized. And so let the weak man say I'm strong. I came here to resurrect knowing myself, knowing my power, knowing my truth, listening to my intuition, my voice, and my higher self, my connection to God, and knowing what to do with my finances or which direction to go in with my life. This was what might sound like baby steps, but they were they were the difference between life and death for me. Because in fulfilling everything outside of me, I forgot my life. What was I? Why did I come here? Why did I come to Earth? So let the weak man say I am strong is that when I touch on all of the conditions that I was born into, and I'm going to talk about language in a minute as well, which is where the language that we're born into, the belief systems that we're born into, the thoughts and feeling patterns that we're born into. And when I consciously participate and engage those patterns with a set of tools, those conditions are actually the opposite of who I really am.
I totally agree. And you've already covered so much stuff. And I just want to say, you know, I started my career as a registered nurse and then a registered psychiatric nurse and specialized in drug and alcohol rehabilitation. And for you at 17 years old, you were still, in my eyes, like a young baby because we hadn't had much time to experience life. And for you to have that awakening then, you know, there's still people 40, 50, 60, 90 even that haven't woken up to who they really are. What is their purpose? What is their mission? And you were asking those questions of yourself to yourself at 17 years old. You know, I think that's remarkable. You as a soul, you took on a huge role to find out who you really are, you know, because Michael Newton, who founded the Institute of Life Between Lives, he talks about, you know, the souls and the soul councils and what we put our hands up for, you know, and we all have different exit points. You remembered your divinity, your sovereignty at a very young age. And I know your parents, and like my parents and most parents, they do the best for their children, the best that they were taught and what they believe is right from the dogma of society, with the things like you're saying, with this teaching from the church and the schools and everything else. And they did their best. They're beautiful souls, and they played their roles remarkably in this game of life. And you are like the bright shining star. And, you know, when I went to your workshop all those years ago, I was blown away with how much knowledge and wisdom was pouring out of you, you know, and it was remarkable. And from our previous chat, I know you, at that stage when you're in rehab, you got put on to William Whitecloud's work, who is a superconscious genius. And that was one of the things that helped you. And I've done William's work recently, like his, obviously 17 years on, different types of, well, more than 17 years on, because you're now 45. So he's changed his work remarkably and doing online stuff, and he is a super conscious genius. And like you, he had a heroin addiction. And I know you worked with the infamous Tantric master for many years, Shantam Nityama. So do you want to tell us how that came about and your experiences and skills that you gained with him?
Yes. Well, I'll start with William because that's where it all started. So as I came through rehab, there's you do like an initial detox 5 weeks process just to come clean and get some initial founding in yourself. And then typically what would happen is a person would go on to do 1 or 2 years in what's called a halfway house, where it's a very therapeutic environment and there's a lot of counseling and groups and so on provided to support a person in integrating back into society. It's like a chrysalis, you know, how to really support you in your complete and total transformation. But what came up for me was that due to my age, none of the halfway houses would accept me, that I was considered a 90% failure rate statistic, and there was therefore no funding or acceptance into any public or private halfway homes, that I just was in a statistic. And so I was sent back home. And I do believe we do choose our parents, and I chose very well. And I also chose perfectly for what I came here to resurrect. And the collective nature, the grand nature of you, as you've identified, of my calling was not only to raise myself, but actually to be an inspiration in my world, and to be a sister and a mentor and a friend to many other women also choosing to fully come home and awaken. And so that's essentially what my workshops and courses have become, is a community, a global weaving of the connection that we all have. I call it the sister web of life that's surrounding the world. And it's this invisible connection that we have all in our wombs. And coming to the work that I came to share was chatting to one of the nurses one evening. I'll always remember this chat about what would my options be if none of the halfway houses would accept me. How would I sustain? I had such an amazing awakening already in my first 5 weeks of rehab, of discovering concepts of the inner child and the wounded child and the black sheep, and all of these different modalities were presented to me. And I was just drinking it in, like, yes, oh my God, I was just so I was so enthusiastic in my therapy. I was like, yes, that's going on for me. And so what could I do to sustain this newfound awareness, which was not a language that my beautiful family did. They had no language around emotional well-being or emotional intelligence or spiritual guidance. And that wasn't something they were interested in. So it was apparent to me, oh, I understand how I got out here, but how am I going to support myself to transform, which is what's required. And one of the nurses had said to me about, well, you know, when I said I believe that heroin is actually just a gateway to remembering our true bliss, and that it's actually my spiritual self knocking on the door. And he passed me William Whitecloud's flyer and said, this might interest you. And it's a funny thing, because I had stayed clean for a period of time, leaving the rehab and going home. And I had this flyer with me, just an 8-month a transformational journey. And I was really knowing in my heart of hearts, that's for me. And it did not have a small price tag on it, let's say that much. And I was like, you know, I'm a high school student. I've just finished high school. I'm a recovering heroin addict, and that I don't have like $10,000 sitting in my account. What am I going to do? And so I prayed about it. I suppose now looking back on it, it was a form of prayer, and I didn't have a religious context. It was just how I prayed to my higher self. And I reached the moment where it was like, I'm done with this. I'm going to use. And so I said, okay, how about, and I would start making these negotiations with myself. How about first we go to an NA meeting, and then after the meeting, if you still want to use, I will let you. So this was how I would negotiate this little stretches where I could go past the urge or the craving and see what miracle could land that could turn something around. And so it was like, you can still have it. I'm not saying no, but after we go to a meeting. Okay. So I went to go to the meeting, and it wasn't on, but on the wall was the flyer for William's course. And in that moment, my cravings dropped, because I knew that I had my answer. So I went to William's intro, and of course then signed on, and I acquired the funds through family support, and attended the 8-month training. And I came to William, well, I'm actually doing this training because this is my halfway house. And he, as you said, had recovered from heroin himself. And he said, well, that this is the best halfway house you could have ever chosen, because I'm here to let you know that you cannot cure heroin addiction. You can only upgrade your life, and in your true nature and purpose, if you live on path with who you really are, most likely addiction won't be there. And so I really resonated with, oh, I'm not trying to stop something, because first of all, try and do anything, try and stand up. It's futile. You can't try and stand. You can't stand. Just stand up. So just give up. So actually, an addiction is actually an energy package. And energy can't go anywhere. You can't give up energy. It can't go anywhere. It can just change. It can just transform. And so it made total sense to me to just neutralize the charge on the part of me that was trying to fix me, and relax into receiving guidance from my higher self in living my true nature and purpose now, today. And I would get 3 steps, 3 actions to take, go to this place, speak to this person, write down this, read this book. It was a step. It wasn't just a waffly thing. It was like, take action. So I would take that action. I was very dutiful and very dedicated, and said, okay, dear guides. And I would do these practices that William had shared. And I would go to my guides in my temple and receive my instructions, and I would fulfill the instructions. And it truly worked without knowing how. And a magician is just a master who's following a seemingly invisible set of steps. And so magically, I transformed my life. All of a sudden, I'm living my dream life that I didn't even know was my dream life, but my heart revealed it to me. And that was on traveling, following my feet, following my heart, following music, following spirituality, following what deeply interested me, informed me. And I forgot that I had a drug addiction. I just forgot. It wasn't there. Each day I woke up with the craving, and I said, okay, I did my meditation. I followed my instructions. And by the afternoon, I forgot. And the day would come again. Oh, remember? Yeah. And then months went by. There was no need to even have the negotiation, because the desire to be in love was strong. And it's a lot like the story that we're told, the white wolf and the black wolf, and which one will win the fight? Well, it's the one you feed. And so I learned instinctively on a very deep level, on a life and death level, because heroin addiction becomes very quickly a life and death choice. And it became very evident to me quickly that what we put our focus on, we become. And so when I focus on what I love, I very quickly become love. And in love, the codependence is how to survive without love. So just coming to love is already the cure to everything. And I'm not talking about a waffly love. I'm not talking about feel good. I'm not even necessarily talking about what we like. Love is a quality to me. It's a substance that is perfect. It can be fierce. It can be deeply uncomfortable, but it is the source of who we are. It's life itself. And so it's like it can be like a howling wind. It can be like a warm hug. Love can take on so many different forms. When I say listening to my heart, following my love, what I'm talking about is something that can never be explained, negotiated, or rationalized. It is, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I totally agree.
And I think it's important to say, to mention that, because love can easily be confused as a like or a dislike. Oh, I love that. But what you actually mean is I really like that. Because love is actually beyond even expression.
Exactly. And before you go much further, I'll just say, William is a great teacher at letting go of the need to know how, which is
Yes.
what we're all asking, and where your attention goes, your energy goes. So, as you correctly said, it's all about having that focus. And it's wonderful hearing your story, because I hope there's many other people with various addictions, because a lot of people, lose one addiction and they replace it with another addiction. And
Yes.
if you had to have an addiction, to find that love, I say to people, you go with your intuition and your gut feeling, and you touch with the love inside you, which is in us and all around us. So to have that divine bliss within you is just remarkable. And what a wonderful addiction to have. I'm not saying you're addicted to it, but if one was to be addicted to anything, to be addicted to this divine love, the world would be a much happier, peaceful place to live in.
Well, so what I said about upgrading, so an addiction I would call like a shadow nature. And then if we bring that into perfection, then we see commitment. And this is again how I look at healing, is we might bring something into the space, we call it, oh, here we go, here's addiction. All right, we see something's wrong, let's say. And then when we choose to see perfection or see with our creator's eyes, oh, suddenly we see there's a whole ball, not just half a ball called addiction, but there's actually a whole ball. And so the addiction actually just becomes commitment. And then when that whole ball actually elevates, it becomes devotion. And so rather than making any part of us wrong, like, oh, you have, let's say you're a compulsive liar. And we bring that into the space and we see, oh, compulsive lying. But that's actually just half of a bigger picture. And our job is to find out what's the fullness, what is lying, why do I lie, what is the energy of that, instead of trying to get rid of that. And you can't make energy go anywhere. So if you have compulsive lying to yourself and others going on in your life, and I know that this is really big for many people, your job is to then bring light to what is the fullness of lying. What does lying turn into? And it actually becomes alignment with our truth. So a lie is actually a way of trying to preserve pleasing others, but actually trying to stay true to ourselves. So we have a lie to protect our truth. So if we bring light and love into the program or the energetic package of compulsively lying, then what we start to see is I give myself permission to be aligned with my truth.
Wow, I've got goosebumps. That's a wonderful way of presenting it, because we are the whole. There's no separation.
And then the elevation of that is authorship. To actually become an author of a topic. So we shift from lying into mastery, into being an author on the topic, to being a spokesperson for that. So it's a very protective energy that's just half understood. But if you try and get rid of it, you will never even get to the authorship, because the lie is just half of the authorship. Our power to be safe in what we're here to speak.
That's
and so
beautiful.
People who have been liars actually create a lot of safety in the world for everyone to have their truth and to be safe in our truth. Yeah.
That's a wonderful way of putting it. And as William says, we're all born with 12 dysfunctional beliefs, which are lies that we make up from our conception till the age of 4, you know, and it's all to do with our relationship with our mother, like with the indigenous tribes, for example, the Mayans. When you're born, if you're breastfed and, you know, loved and your mother's around, you learn about feeling the love. And then from 2 till 4, traditionally, your father would take you to the top of the mountain so you can see the way love's brought in. And if those needs are not met, for whatever reason, we make up lies. And most of them, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm invisible, I'm not capable, I don't have the capacity. And even if, like in my case, I used to come top of the class and, you know, as I grew older, getting distinctions for everything, you still think you're not good enough. And you have that need to be perfect. And most of us, you know, probably 90% of the people in the world are trying to resolve this tension and prove their lies wrong. And
the
like
more
you
that
and
we're
I,
proving
we're
our
not
lies
living
wrong, yeah, the more we prove them wrong, the more we become them because we're focused
exactly.
on them rather
Yeah.
than just going, well, what's the rest of the story? What's the full picture? Because it's only half the picture.
Yeah. So William's always said, and many other people I've done brain entrainment courses with, is like, it's a myth to think that they're going to go away. You'll never get rid of them because they're part of you. But when we're in tension, because we will slip back into our humanness, when someone presses our trigger, whether it's a person, event, or situation, it's like, great. You know, I feel uptight. My ego's driving me like mad to look into it, but our ego's the vehicle of orientation, and we can go, this is a wonderful opportunity for me to master my spirituality. Okay, BS, I'm going to put you aside. You can jump on my back, you can come along for the ride, but I'm going to rise above and you can join me on this journey, but be the observer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was an amazing training that I did with William. And what came out of it was a deeply embodied structure for living creatively. And when we start to say living creatively, we're creating, creator, God. So we're really living our God life when we're being creative in whatever way that is. Creative accounting, creative architecture, it's just creative consciousness. And that's what I awoke into, initiated into through William's 8-month training. And then went on to do 2 more studies with him of facilitation training. And so what came through first for me in living my true nature and purpose was it was all about a sexual exploration. And it became very evident to me why I might have been trying to destroy myself, because it was not a quiet exploration. It became very loud, and it became erotic dance workshops for women that created like a sacred sexual awakening through erotic dance. And so this was like, no, it was no small calling. And what was powerful about it for me was that it wasn't anything I knew, but it was actually within me. It was my wisdom. It was the wisdom of my body. It was the wisdom of my bones. It was the wisdom of my lifetimes. And it was actually what I came here to share. And very much about the process for me was, it's not about, service is service. So, when my guidance would tell me, you're going to teach this class on sacred sexuality, and I would say, but I don't know anything about anything. I'm just actually trying to stay alive here. I'm just coming out of rehab. And I was shown, you're going to speak to millions of people around the world, and you're going to be teaching them about sexuality and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, okay, but I don't, you know, and then it was like, and all that we require of you is to say yes and agree, because actually this is coming through you. This is from your creator to you, through you, and around you. and you don't need to know. And actually anything you would know would just get in the way, because this is a direct channel of information. And so I would just say yes, and proceed to have. I felt like I was dying, like not in a slow, steady way, just like, I'm sure I'm about to just self-combust here now, like to my personality, to my known reality. I was like, I'm saying yes to what? And just the thought of walking into a room of women, like 10 women, 5 women, and to facilitate something about sexuality. I mean, just to say yes to that, it was just like I was agreeing to jumping off a cliff. I mean, it just, the terror that I felt, and the just the sheer terror. It was just like, I'm going to die. And that became actually quite a marker for me, quite like a road sign of like, oh yeah, this is your next step, because you feel like, you're going to die. And it's like the opposite of like using drugs that could kill you. And there's a sort of apathy or numbness around that of like, yeah, who cares if I die? But now all of a sudden that I'm going to live my true life is like, oh my God, I'd almost rather die, but not. I feel, with certain death. And I would walk in the room and literally just be sitting there like, I know nothing and I am terrified, and breathe and get my first instruction and follow that, and my next instruction and follow that. And then suddenly I'm at the end of the workshop, and I spoke the entire workshop, and the look on everyone's faces was like, oh, wow, like lights are on. Everyone's lights were on. And most of all, I was like, damn, that was like really, really good. Like I listened to every word. Like I'm at the front row, front row set of stage, like all ears. Like I was like, that was amazing. And I realized that we really just came here to teach what we're here to learn. And so I wonderfully just educated myself over the last 25 years, traveling the world, sharing my facilitation, creating cocoons, chrysalises for us women to co-creating, because we would create it together, these portals that we would all transform through each and every time. And so all of my retreats were transformational programs. And then what happened was that because it began as a program, and so I would take women through these programs, take us through these programs, because I was participating. Like, I'm in this too. Like, I'm not sitting up here like I know something and I'm teaching it to you. I'm in here getting it as we're all getting it. And so I'm in it with you. And there was something about that many women would remark on. It was very new. Not many women had, mostly they'd been taught to. Very rarely had they been taught with. And so that was a very powerful element to my work, because it really brought in all of the principles that the feminine grows through sharing, and that there's not a hierarchy in the feminine, but rather a frequency. And that when a woman has a particular frequency in her womb, if she's been initiated, activated, awoken, then all of the other wombs in the room will actually gravitate and vibrate at her frequency if she will hold it, if she will stay true to it. In other words, if she no longer needs to be liked, which I dealt with early on in my life, all my codependence, living for others, all of that. And you see, I start to look back at it all, and I'm like, wow, from the minute I was born till now, I've been perfectly trained. I'm a universe in training for what I'm here to be. So the step of like really getting what codependence and addiction and substance addiction and all of that is so deeply, so young, and resurrecting out of that into, I now live for me. Now I can serve my work, because you're not necessarily going to be liked if you're walking in the room saying, hey, I'm here to help you step through your darkest shadow, the darkest night of your soul, to remember who you really are and awaken that. The personality or the survival pattern is going to receive that as a potential threat to, I'm going to die now experience. Yeah. Like as I was saying, like before I do my work, I'm going to die. So I'm walking in the room going, hey, I'm going to walk you all to the edge of where you're going to feel like you're going to die. Some people be like, hell no, you're not doing that with me, even though I signed up for it, So it's very useful to have, I'll say, like, nullified the receptor in me that is so concerned about being liked by others, but actually know that I'm here to be an ally and deeply loved for what I bring and what I do and what how I empower others, but for going a little bit of liking on the way. And again, that's kind of love and like concept. And so,
yeah, so I was just going to briefly say thank you for sharing that, because a lot of people live in fear. Because for years I taught public speaking and networking, connecting, and like Seinfeld says, most people would rather be dead than to step up on a stage and speak. Some people, and terror comes in many ways with public speaking. So it could be on a stage, it could be talking at a friend's birthday or wedding, it could be talking in the boardroom. You might be great at talking in the boardroom to your staff members, but you freak out talking to your parent or your spouse or your child. So there's many reasons we feel that terror. And I think for you at a young age, that was remarkable. And also, I was at one of your ceremonies, and I just felt so much love brimming in my heart and joy, just witnessing, being part of the whole transformation. And even though I was a guest to see the ceremony and with your students, I was one of those students. It was like you incorporated everything. It just flowed through you. And at such a young age, to trust that the divine is going to lead you in what you say, do, and think, and be guided. That process was incredible. And I just take my hat off to you to be so young and just allow that experience to evolve. And yeah, as I said earlier, you've evolved into this incredible facilitator for women empowerment.
Yes. And it started off as literally that, dancing the divine. And people came up to me, oh, you're a dance teacher. I was like, no. But you said dancing the divine. As yes. And it's exactly the dance of life, and allowing, letting, agreeing with, consciously participating in our divinity, moving us, through us in life, how we are moved to speak, how we are moved in our body, and especially how we're moved in our intimacy. And so teaching that sexuality and spirituality, they're one and the same. And our life force is our sexuality, and sex is how we were created. If there were two people needed to come together for me to be here to talk to you, and anywhere that I might have a socialization around sex, however I'm viewing it, an identity around sex, is in opposition to my true sexual spiritual life force. And so Tantra literally just means to unite the dark and the light. And so in the same way, sexuality or spirituality, or our heavenly self, our godly self, our creator self, and our human self, our ego, our limitations, our identity. And so very quickly learning that sex itself has nothing to do with our identity. Our identity is who we think we are. And who we think we are is just that. It's not who we are. It's just, actually, it's where we are, but it's not actually who we really are, because who we really are is I am. That I am.
Exactly.
And so dancing the divine is literally I am that I am, moving me here in this moment. And I am that I am is unified consciousness. So there is no audience. And I'm of service to I am that I am in me, in you. So whatever is coming through me, it's coming through us. And in this situation, we're just in the yin and yang of I'm dancing, you're watching. But who's watching? Who's dancing? And this is what lovemaking really is. So during the course, without focusing on sex or lovemaking specifically, although sometimes I do go into those conversations because women ask about it. And a lot of what I'm drawing from are my years of apprenticing and mentoring with Tantra Nityama, which if we get time, we can dive into that as well today. But more so what my teaching and what I serve, what I create, what it's about, whether it's Dancing the Divine or a Tantric Life or Wild Lotus, because they're just the different names as it's evolved over 25 years. But all of the work that I do is essentially, it's a transformational structure. So a woman can come at any age, from any walk of life, for any reason, she can be called for many reasons. It might be a sexual exploration, but essentially it's to empower herself in whatever way, shape, or form her life is requiring empowerment in this moment. And the structure or the portal or the process that the person will go through will transform them into a higher state. It's a transmutation where you take one state of being and you clarify. And what happens is the dross rises to the surface and we scrape it off, and what's left is the gold. And that's just to describe the spiritual process that will happen to anyone and everyone that comes through working with me, and whatever it is. And that's what I love about, and that's why it became a tantric life, because, a tantric life, a beautiful life, a spiritual life, it's about living in alignment with who we really are. It's about awakening to and remembering the choice and the life that you chose before you came to heaven. And then we can just look at everything that's happened in our life as a perfect catalyst to awaken that and teach us and train us to be really good at that.
That's beautiful, because I love the way that you said earlier, which I totally agree with, that you chose your parents. And it's I often say to people, yes, we choose our parents and we come through them, not for them. We're all here for our own journey. And I know you just had a miracle happen at the age of 44. You mentioned that you just had a baby, beautiful
Yes.
Mateo. And
Yes.
would you like to share your experience, how this came about? Because you were going through a near-death experience then also, before his conception.
Yeah. So as my journey, just as I said, each workshop I would do would be so transformative. So I was just on this magical mystery tour called My Life since I came through rehab, and it's just been like, a continuous magical mystery tour. And there's so many twists and turns in that journey on my road. Where to dive in to tell the story. But actually early on, so coming out of William's trainings and birthing my work, I very quickly came to a realization that quite shocked me. I was driving along. I was under 28 years old, and I was driving along and I had to stop the car. It was like epiphany. I was dizzy. I was giddy. And the words came through me, I don't have to have a baby. And I suddenly realized that there was a wave of a socialized choice, or a wave of pressure of like, you just will. You're a woman, you'll have a baby. You're a woman, you'll go to school. Like it's this mapped out life for you, and you will get an education and you'll get a degree, and then you will get a job and you'll get a career, and then you'll get married and you'll have a baby and you'll pay a mortgage, and there's the story and it's already written for you. And in this moment, because I see octaves. So layers and layers. It's like the first octave and then the next and the next. And these octaves are all the same. It's like an onion, we're peeling the onion. It's the same onion, but we've got layers and layers. And so this was the next layer of awakening to like, I don't have to live that narrative. Oh my God, I can live any narrative I choose. I mean, it just came up and I was like, mwah, see you later. No marriage for me, no mortgage for me, no baby for me. I am writing my story, and my story involves temples and dakinis and sacred sexual rituals and higher states of consciousness and bliss and, just the devotion to our supernatural capacity, our godly capacity to truly live heaven on earth, to truly live immortal life, to truly live empowered sovereign lives of living in the Garden of Eden, the promise in our hearts as we know life can be wholesome and nourishing, good. And I just saw my role in this. I almost saw myself like a nun, other than very different to, let's say, a Catholic nun, more like a tantric nun, where I'm married to God, and I'm here to bring heaven to earth through my portal, through my womb, in whatever way that's expressing moment to moment, and to be really, masterful of that, to really an artist of that. And I just was so filled with the joy of creation that I didn't have to, that I could do what I choose, what's in my heart. And so it was and is, and exactly as I described, in so many profound and magical and phenomenal ways of creation and serving and travel and teaching, and brought us to a point in our life. We engaged a study of Ifa. And Ifa literally it's a West African religion or spiritual system that I discovered. It's like my religion, and it's actually the oldest religion that's any record of on the planet. Predates Judaism, Christianity, everything, in its artifacts, in its records. And in this spiritual system, I would say, if we're looking at the power of words, religion means to go backwards. To spiritual means to spiral up, to breathe. And so Ifa translates, it's a Yoruba language that translates to the sacred study of ourself, or the sacred study of nature, or the sacred study of our true nature. So the translations are a little, but you get the gist. And I took on this study because there were certain things that were happening in my teaching life and in my personal life that started to elevate. And I recognized a requirement for getting more spiritual support with the types of challenges that I was now facing. And so I went to Ifa for a reading, for a divination reading. And I received such profound, accurate information about my life and about choices I was making and assistance in making choices and the insights as to why those choices were relevant to me. And so we took on Ifa study. We initiated into Ifa, which is just to simply formally marry my spiritual life. So like that concept of nun, it was like, it was now sanctified. I'm married to my creator. I'm married to my spirituality. I'm married to my destiny, and I serve my higher destiny. And with these tool sets, so Ifa gives us these beautiful tool sets, and Iya is the name I received in the next level of initiations. And Iya means divine mother or female priest. And so it's really just a woman who is here to empower others. And while it doesn't mean anything really, it also means everything. And so the first initiation is just a hand of Ifa where you become a student. And then in the student initiation, we receive the guidance that because of the work I do and also my partner, and due to the type of energies around us and the service that we provide, receiving the priest initiations is highly recommended. So we went on to do that 3 years later. That was about 2018, around the end of 2018. And when you go into Ifa, they say like, okay, you've done a lot of spiritual work in your life and you've had like near-death experiences and big crisis and big awakenings and initiations. Yes. And get ready, because your first year in Ifa is going to be like, on one level, like a midlife crisis. On another level, you're just elevating. So a lot of things will leave your life. A lot of things will come in. And we were like, ho, ho, hum. Yes, we've done a lot of intense things and this doesn't seem very intense. So we thought our life was going that way. 4 weeks later, we were on tour in Europe for 5 years. It was like, Ifa took over like in a heartbeat, and things like flew to us that we were like, oh my God, there's a full group and I'm going to London and then Europe and things that were in our life just left. So it was very immediate. And in the second initiations, they said, oh, good, get ready for the next 3 years. Crisis. So we were like, okay, well, the first crisis was pretty good. So we'll get ready for this one. About 6 weeks later, my teacher began to he woke up one morning dying in the bed, Nityama. And we had a 3-week retreat that was starting a week later. And we had just received our priest initiations into Ifa. This was our first level of training because he would only receive he would only act upon the guidance that we would receive in our divinations as Babalao Even Ifa to assist him on what he. So essentially our training, his life and our training, we were given the greatest task of resurrecting our teacher's life with our newly found Ifa tools. And fortunately, one morning it said, go to the hospital. And on that day, he got the assistance he needed. It was dehydration, in fact. So he, with the support that he received immediately, saved his life. And he went also through his own life transformation from that day on. And so that was about 17 years we had been working together. And that incident then just has us both now in a different relationship with each other. But up until that point, we were working closely together. And it's where a lot of the deeper information and exposure to the truth of sex in the body, the truth of sexual relating and the role that it plays spiritually for the woman and for the man, and the energetics of lovemaking and the energetics of creation through sex magic. All of these deeper initiations were imparted to me from Nityama through these, over these years of assisting and supporting him with administration, with his workshops, and working with the women that were seeing him, also attending my workshops as a support to integrate what they were experiencing with his work. And so this was a profound blessing, a profound education, a profound training in very deep spiritual discipline. But when this 3 years came after our priest initiation, he, as I said, began to die. And then we came home to Australia once he was fine. And I had picked up a typhoid. My immune system, after 20 years of traveling, had become very depleted and compromised. And I picked up a deadly typhoid, and then a whole other host of bacterias and viruses, you name it. It was like there was a party going on. And, for 3 years, I began to disappear. They were eating my flesh. They were eating me. I was literally in the house. So it was for about a year, and then different things happened. I got shingles then in my right eye. And so when all of this started, August 2019, I was essentially a walking stick. And at that point, I was a bit concerned, like, for a cure. And I'd heard a lot about conscious language through Nityama and the importance of the power of our words. And so I did a little Googling, sort of in my deathbed, finding Bob and listening to some of his recordings about sacred body language translations. And everything that I'd ever known and discovered myself, he was speaking about, and so much more. And I was just like lit up. And so I was listening to sacred body language translations as I was laying there, like, starting to apply. The first one that really got me was, a blessing that is bestowed, that is not received, is a burden. And the burdens manifest on our shoulders. And so I have this very distinct scars all on my shoulders. And I had felt very burdened by supporting Nityama, very burdened by my spiritual duties. So what had become this like magical tour had become a burden. And then, as he said, a burden, a blessing that's bestowed, that's not received, is a burden. So I started going, oh, what are all the blessings in my life that I'm not receiving? Because I feel so heavily burdened. And then the next morning, an email came in. He was giving 15-minute consultations. So I was like, I didn't even think. I booked in. I got in. And in the first minute, he was able to show me the language patterns that contained a death wish code that I had been using.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I was like, I wanted to say, I don't have a death. Wait a second. I can see the person that's talking in the video here is a person that's not living. So I was like, okay. Because I had become a little bit of a know-it-all after 20 years of doing my thing. And like you say, so young and so wise. And, so somewhere that had also become my identity. So I had reached a point where I had grown, but reached my own ceiling. And so my wisdom was, my blessings had become my burden. And so I was like, okay, I'm listening up. New teacher in the scene. In 15 minutes through his questioning and my answering, I felt the first moment of ease that I had felt since all of these health things had started to happen. And then with my divination tool that we practice every morning with Ifa, the next morning it said, oh, you've had an amazing blessing, but it will only last if you study everything. And then, of course, the next email comes in with the study package. A nice big investment again.
Yes.
And I did not want to do it. The little me was like, no way. I don't even have that money. And the great self that is disciplined and dedicated and has a set of tools that says, I am devoted to my guidance of my Ifa, I surrendered and invested. It just so happened to be that the whole package I invested in arrived the day I was going overseas. But from the moment I did that training, miracles landed. A student contacted me and said, can we put a group together for you in Italy? My husband was in Italy looking after his mother. I had this thing of like, if I just leave this house where I've been sick and dying for 8 months and just go to Italy, I might just suddenly start eating and totally magically get better. And so I said to the student, I cannot organize a thing. I can't function, but if you can put a group together, I'll be there. 3 days later, she's like, I've got a group. I've got a venue. You just get yourself here. I got myself to Italy. I started eating. I radically, magically recovered. But the day I was leaving, the whole package I invested in arrived. So I put it on the shelf and off I go. And it just so happened to be that the day I get back, we go into lockdown. So we're at 2020 now. And I'm recovering. I'm getting stronger in my health, all of these things. And the planet goes into this. So this is about the second year of my crisis from the initiation. And they say, so the Mastery Systems puts out this another course, and it's a mentoring course that mentors a person through, happens to be the package I had invested it in 8 months earlier that I had just put in a cupboard. And I was like, how am I ever going to do that study? Because I'm so lazy to do study, so. And then this course appeared. So I'm like, perfect. I can do this mentoring that'll assist me to commit to doing the study because it's all a home study pack. So that I sign up for the course, and the course, the day it starts, I get shingles in my right eyeball.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, I'm really going to get this one because I'm going to transform the way I see everything.
Exactly.
So for 4 months, I was in an extreme shingles recovery. pretty much back into my house, back into the cocoon, back into the dark room, and studying with Bob now as my mentor while studying through this material. Now, when we received our Ifa initiation, our priest one, not our hand one, but our second one, our priest one, the guidance that came through to me and my husband during that initiation was, you two, Ifa is telling you two, it's time for you to have a baby. And we got together because we had both agreed we didn't want children in this life and that wasn't our story. So there we are going, oh, okay, yep, sure, yep, baby, yep. And Ifa said, prepare yourself. So when I look back over the 3 years that happened after the initiation, I literally went through a physical strip back to the bone, released ancestral programs and patterns that could not be carried forward with me as Iya Ifa.
Wow.
And then discovered my next upgrade of teaching, which was, William's work is amazing, powerful, beautiful, clean, the creative orientation. But the piece that was always missing for me was the word, the language. And this is what Bob, he's in his late 70s, devoted his entire adult life, 50 years of service in forming a systematic approach to awakening the language of our heart, which is our God conscious language. And he's done it through a system that reveals our programmed, or what he calls Babel language, or a Babel virus, that is speaking in duality, right, wrong, good, bad, you, me, hot, cold, they did it to me, the powers outside, codependence. And to resurrect, to wake up in, he downloaded, I think, about 12 domains of consciousness, that certain words that we use have an outcome. And those outcomes, there are 12 domains of outcome. So let's say, for example, want. If I use the word want implies that I don't have it. So I'm in a lack conscious. If I'm wanting, I want this. Do you want that? Do you want to come here? Every time I'm using want, I'm rooted in unconscious belief. And you were saying about William and the 12 beliefs that we have. So these are other than conscious. We're not necessarily walking around going, I believe in lack. But if I'm using the words want, it's stemming from the root of believing in lack. So like a divination, if I can listen consciously and not criticize, but actually listen and hear, then I can hear when I use the word want that I'm actually believing in lack. And through his system, he shows a quantum thriving technique of how to take the language that we're using and transform it into the language that's already in us from our creator, the language of our heart. So through this process of language, I came to, as I said, discover the language I was using that was actually putting stress signals into my body. And the language codes I was using was, I have to, and it's hard. I have to, and I can't. I have to, and I can't. And I discovered that I was saying that multiple times a day about things that I really love. And wow. So the burdens that weren't received, the blessings that weren't received were becoming burdens. And I had a stress relationship to my love. So this was a really, really beautiful and powerful tool set to wake up to take myself to the next octave of creative orientation is my word made flesh, or in my case, my word made no flesh. And so I'm refleshing my life. I'm remanifesting my life. So what happened in those trainings was I also shared with Bob, okay, I'm doing this mentoring with you. And actually, after 25 years and having touched so many women's life, my next octave of service is to actually create a facilitator training where women all over the world could hold Wild Lotus sessions, which is like a condensed yogic practice out of the programs that I've been creating. So it's a transformational yoga session that happens over a 1.5 to 3 hour time frame period. And that's what I'm predominantly doing now, is the Wild Lotus practice, which is, as I say, like a consolidation of all the programs that I was teaching previously. So in this Wild Lotus practice, having women all around the world holding groups and in places where women can come and literally transform themselves on a weekly basis, so that they're staying aligned with their spiritual energy as it's progressing through their life. So they're kind of just coming in and getting what they need and then going on, and it's just a place to really replenish the woman and to really empower our feminine and to really stay vibrating in our sexual spiritual energy, and to cleanse off anywhere that we may be picking up societal programs or sliding into pleasing others, or whatever those habits may be from the past, a muscle memory that we can consciously participate in, tracking with the upgrading, the way that our spiritual energy is expanding and opening, staying in alignment with that. So that's essentially what the Wild Lotus practice is. And so waking up to language, my word made flesh, it's just such a wonderful next phase on in living the creative orientation and in increasing the tool set. So I shared with Bob, these are my outcomes. My outcome is to have a facilitator training, and somewhere down the bottom of my head, like, have our baby, Because, Aoife had told me, get ready for have a baby and prepare and whatever. And, I was, of course, with shingles going, well, thanks God I don't have a baby, because being a mother with shingles, no. There are so many incidences in my life, so much commitment to my work, so many travel, so many incidences where there's no way I could have done that and also been a mother to a baby, to a child, to a human, in the way that I'm guided to be a mother, really present and be why have a baby and let someone give it to someone else? If you're going to have a baby, you're there to raise the baby. And so I was like, thanks God. And then of course Bob comes back to me, and there's only one thing that he responds to: having a baby, great. And I was like, oh, because it had been such a deep relinquish of the program. It was such a big turnaround to say, well, what is it now to truly be blessed by a baby? How could that even be a blessing? I was like, that's just work. No. Well, no. And I am so glad I waited. I am so glad of the divine timing. 44, which I am also told numbers about 44. Oh, it's your true life work and everything. So everything I just did for now is just to get ready to be a great mom. And that's just so perfect, the full circle of like, I don't have to be a mom, so I could truly be the great divine mother the promise of our lineage, and that being a mother can be a truly satisfying and fulfilling and joyful and celebratory experience. I know that there's a vast, diverse set of experiences that mothers can have, and that I know that my mother had with me was far from what anything I would ever want to replicate. And all forgiveness on both of us, it was not easy for her. Let's just say that much. And so to be now mom at my young age of 45 is so much joy. It's profound. I mean, I'm just going to cry. It's so beautiful. It's so blessed. I am so blessed. We are so blessed. We have the most beautiful baby. And I truly believe it's due to the sacrifice I made in this. And by sacrifice, I mean all of the dedication and to my true service, to my true nature, and sacrificing addiction and sacrificing little self and sacrificing the me, and the I want what I want and the like and the dislike to truly serve love. Then I discovered love truly serves me.
Wow, that's a great revelation. And just for the listeners, I want to say Bob is, his name is Robert Tennyson Stevens. and he's the founder of Meta Body Electronics. And I know you hold him in high esteem. And it's great for all the listeners as well, because our parents are such big influences on our lives, and so many of us have chosen a career pathway to please our parents, and we are people pleasers. And the big message you've given to everyone today is about pleasing yourself and listening within and listening to yourself talk. And I totally agree. For years, I've been saying to people, watch the words you're saying, because want means you're going to end up with the experience of want. You know, I want. Yeah, okay, well, the universe is like, okay, I'll give you the experience of wanting. And as you say, that's about lack. But I'm aware of the time, the precious time.
I'm glad you are. You did ask. I was like, oh dear, how am I going to answer this question? Because this one needs a bit of context.
That's all right. Yeah. For the listeners, we were just going to have a 30-minute chat today, but we're not in a linear space, so we're just going with the flow. However, I know the power of your work, and I know you've got some incredible workshops coming up. So would you like to explain about your upcoming workshops?
Yeah, just briefly, because they can go to my website and read anything they want. So this is the first course that I've offered since becoming mom. So Matteo is now 11 months, and we have a lot of support around us. So I'm really supported to share this work. It's with women. It's on Zoom. So you can do it anywhere in the world. And the time zones are UK and USA, Europe friendly. They're very early in Australia, but they're still friendly. So you can join us in a global gathering of sisters. It's for new and experienced women. And I'm rebuilding the foundations. So there's going to be 3 series starting, and they're going to be consecutive. So series 1 is Wild Lotus and the Language of Mastery. So I've talked about Wild Lotus. It's essentially the consolidation of all my courses into a tantric yoga practice. It's very inner orientated. It's there's nothing like it, and it's nothing like it. So just come for the free intro session, which is tomorrow. 6 a.m. Wednesday in Australia, 9 p.m. UK, or you can work out your time zone. And I'll give you all the links that you can share them below from the talk.
And will you be recording that intro?
No, all of my classes you must. Yes, for those who are attending. No, I don't give out recordings, and the reason being is that because of the intimate nature of the work, and because I'm taking us places it's so new. And our tendency is to want to try and reference to something we think we already know. And that is our personality or a small self way of protecting ourselves from new information. And so this is a really transformational process, and you're required to be with me to do it. Mm-hmm. So it's not something that you could sit back and kind of watch, but it's just something you have to participate in. And it's a feedback thing. So it's not something I'm just doing to you, but actually something we're in together. So very much like what you said, when you were when you were in the audience of the Divine Offering 20 years ago, you felt that it was happening in you at the same time. And so that's my classes are a transmission, and they're very much a transmission into our feeling world and into our feeling bodies, and then guided through there. So each and every class, there's no 2 classes the same. They're very unique, and they're based on who's there in the space, based on a variety of different factors, astrological factors, where we are. And there's just so many factors that inform the way that the class happens. So the Wild Lotus session is an experiential session, much like yoga, but it's very much like a yin yoga that's very relaxing, very internal, but also can be very confronting because you're moving through a terrain inside of yourself that is somewhere you may have been avoiding, or may have maybe touching on patterns or programs that have a lot of energy in them. So there's a lot of support around transforming those patterns. But then it may be that let's just say that for a transformation to take place involves loving the unlovable, forgiving the unforgivable, and feeling the things we're avoiding. And therein lies the importance of creating a lot of safety and therefore being live in the class together. No one's just watching this. And so everyone who participates also knows that there's a tremendous level of safety and sacredness and privacy held for everyone in that space, myself included. I believe like the feminine essence is very much like an incense. It's not like up in your face. It's not already polished and perfect. It sort of wafts and hints itself through the room. And so I teach very much from my feminine, and I allow it to arise and be shared as also who's in the room with me, their energy is rising and sharing. And so it's a co-created class that I guide. That there we go. I got there. And then the second part of the course is language of mastery. So it's 2 sessions a week for 6 weeks. One is an experiential, and then the other is where I'm teaching the language domains so that we can become aware of what our words are doing and also find the remedies and the upgrade reversals, so that how we speak to ourselves produces the outcomes that we truly desire in our life.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. I got goosebumps, so I should say truth bumps.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic.
Yeah.
So
okay. the Wild Lotus and Language of Mastery is the series 1. Series 2 is then Wild Lotus and Sacred Body Language. So it's understanding the language of our body and how to work with what our body is telling us. And then the third part is how to put it all together in the quantum thriving technique. So Wild Lotus and Language of Mastery, Wild Lotus and Sacred Body Language, and Wild Lotus and Quantum Thriving Technique. And through those 3 series, the person is fully acquainted with a tool set. They can manifest and transform every and anything in their life, from life, death, health signals to fertility and motherhood to career, because I've walked all of those paths. And I don't need to know your particular one, because the transformational structure will hold you. My work sends everybody back to their own creator.
wow. And for the listeners, I'd like to say I've met Matteo, and he is a gift from God, a beautiful bundle of joy. And it's wonderful, as is Sandro and yourself. So sign up for the free intro and look at it. And if people miss tomorrow, will you be doing another intro?
I have no plans to do another intro tomorrow, but they could reach out and have a free, like a 15-minute chat with me, just to talk through their things and just to get anything answered that, yeah, we can connect.
Great. So thank you so
and I'm
much.
Also hiring right now. If anybody is listening to what I'm saying and they feel that they would like to apprentice with me, I have a administration role available in an apprenticeship exchange. So I'm hiring right now. Reach out. I'm going to send all the links to you that people can reach me through.
Thank you very much. And I'll definitely put them with the show notes. So thank you so much, dear Iya, for giving up your precious time.
Thank you so much. It's mostly Matteo. He's like outside. I can see him here and he's playing, and I know that, yeah, it's time up. Yeah, you picked me to be your mommy, and your mommy loves to do her work. And so it feeds you too. And he said, yeah, fine. Just bring me lots of playmates. So I have him some good playmates, and we're all good.
Great.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon.